Welcome, everyone here in the loft, everyone out there in Zoom land, everyone out there in YouTube live land, everybody out there in Facebook live land, everybody out there on the vision train. Well, that was exhausting to say all that, but welcome. I am excited to be here for another session of Animal Speak, the Empathy with Nature series. And as we've been doing the last few nights, going to start off with some nice serene music, followed by a guided meditation. So take a moment to get yourself comfortable, settle in with a nice relaxed posture to absorb the good vibes, followed by a nice guided animal speak meditation. Moving into our Animal Speak Vision Quest, Finding yourself walking upon a path that's getting a sense of rock and rockiness. Moving from a grassy area into a rocky area as you find yourself climbing a hillside. And the further you go up this hillside, the more you find rocks beneath your feet. You feel that firmness beneath your feet, the support of the earth, the solid rock earth. You take a moment to bend at the knees. It's a bow-like gesture, and you allow yourself to touch the firm rock with your fingers in a gesture of appreciation. Appreciation for the ground. Feel your heart swell with appreciation for this ground, and sense of the ground sending you back appreciation for your appreciation. As if walking on the shoulders of giants, ancient giants who have been there so long, long before you. So long it's hard to fathom, but you sense the ancientness of this firm ground. You feel the contrast between the freshness of your own being and the ancient cragginess of this rocky ground. And as you continue, you find it becoming even more of a climb, more rocks, a steeper climb, but a sense that it's taking you somewhere. And as you climb over more rocks, you come to see a cave in the distance. A cave with a dark entrance. It feels mysterious. And there's a strange presence about it. And you wonder if you should enter. And when you check in with yourself, you get a no. No, to not enter this cave. So you pass by the entrance and continue your climb upon the rocky crag. Climbing upon increasingly larger rocks. But you feel up for the challenge. Then in the distance, you see another cave. Again, a cave with a dark opening. It calls to you. It looks intriguing. And again, you check in with yourself and your sense of trust in nature. You ask if you should adventure in to explore what may be inside this cave. But again, you get a sense of no. No, to not enter this cave. And you accept whatever wisdom knows the right way for you. You trust it. So you pass by this cave entrance and continue the climb over rocks in what has become mountainous terrain. Rocky and mountainous. There's a few trees there that have managed to grow in the cracks and crevices of the mountainside. You feel a sense of higher altitude, freshness in the space. And as you climb up on another rocky mount, you see yet another cave entrance. Again, mysterious, dark, and your yearning to enter is peaking. And when you check in with yourself as to whether it is wise to enter, this time you get a yes. You get a yes, and you feel a swell inside between excitement and trepidation. You approach the cave entrance. You can feel the cool dampness emanating from the entrance. Take a moment to connect with the sense of trust in the higher aspect of nature. You set your intention to align with that higher aspect, to align and to trust. Feel a sense of safety within yourself. And then you move your body into the entrance to give your eyes and all your senses a chance to acclimatize to the new feeling as you enter this cave space. You actually see and hear nothing. It seems silent inside, yet inviting, as if some mystery calls inwardly to you from inside the cave. You make your way deeper into the cave. It's dark, but your eyes adjust. Sense that you're bringing some light with you. You can also feel your way along the walls, feeling your way along the floor of the cave. You continue to press in deeper, courageously, because it does take your courage to enter into this unknown space. But you sense that it's okay, and there's something awaiting you inside. So you connect to your sense of trust and safety, and you inch your way in, feeling your way along the walls in the dark, until you come to what feels like a larger, more expansive space, cavernous space. You stop, take a few breaths, taking a sense of this open space deep in this cave. It's a sense of anticipation in the air of the cave. You can hear this anticipation even in your own breath. And as you stand there in the middle of this expansiveness, darkness, a light slowly begins to come up. Can't tell where the light comes from, but the inner cave becomes illuminated. It's a soft light, but it's enough to illuminate the inside of the cave. And you see there's a cave wall before you. As you look at the cave wall, wondering what this is all about, cave drawings appear on the wall. animal cave drawings. You look closely at these animal cave drawings. Some of them may move. Some of these animal cave drawings may even speak to you. Just take some time in the silence, stillness of the cave to see what comes. What comes in this cave animal vision. Just gazing in awe at what you see, taking it in. Taking in the image, the idea, whatever's being given and shown to you in the cave. Just feeling the qualities of the image, the idea, the vision, what it feels like. It's holding in the silence what you received from the cave wall. Taking it in with gratitude, holding it within yourself with gratitude. Now the images on the cave wall begin to dissolve. And you're just left looking at the rock of the wall once more. The rock wall. And the light that illuminated this inner recess of the cave begins to wane. And you sense it's time to leave this special sanctuary. So you turn and make your way back, feeling your way along the walls of the cave, towards the cave entrance. As you move, you begin to see the light from outside. You move towards the cave entrance. You move out through the cave entrance back once again into the light of day. But you're still holding what you saw and experienced inside the cave. And you feel changed by it. A different person than when you went in the cave. And you start to make your way down the mountainous terrain, the way you came up. And you hold to the sense of trust and safety that guided you up to the cave. So bit by bit, you make your way down the rocky trail, passing the odd trees growing among the rocks. Feels like the trees know the secrets of the caves. And this thought makes you smile. You arrive back down at the grassy area from where you started. And you look back up from where you just came, sending your thanks to the rocks for carrying you up there, guiding you up there. You couldn't have had this vision if it weren't for them holding the space. And you feel yourself slowly coming back to the outer realm, to your outer senses, coming back to where you're sitting right now, connecting again to your breath, and letting each breath bring you more and more into your senses, and outer awareness. Awareness of the room that you're in. And whenever you're ready, just taking your time, but when you're ready to open your eyes, and we're going to take a few minutes to get a piece of paper, some pencil crayons or crayons, to do some artistic activity. To just play with the idea, the images, the sense of what we received, even journal about it. As I said, the last session, two of the reasons we're doing these animal speak inner journeys is firstly, to build content. We're getting content. We go into this inner space and we get content, and that changes you. That in itself brings change to you, because something new is now a part of you. Something quite deep has emerged, in contrast to just the usual casual conversation we have, or light reading we have. This is something coming from within you, and from a different source than the discursive mind, where we live so much of the time. And so this new content can integrate and build into your being, and it's building especially well because you're using your mind and will to bring it through. It's something you're bringing through. It's not just something floating in, but you're bringing it through you. So it really can integrate well. And this points to the second benefit, is that this use of your mind and will is building new capacities in your being, your will, your imagination. Really, spiritual capacities are being involved and evolved. These neo-shamanic capacities that we've been talking about, these new things. And this is what Rudolph Steiner calls the organs of a new clairvoyance, new psychic abilities, a new clairvoyance, which he contrasts in what he calls atavistic clairvoyance. Atavistic clairvoyance, which is an older form of clairvoyance, inherent in the original shamanistic mindset that characterizes the older cultures. The ancient indigenous tribal group mind had an atavistic clairvoyance, just a naturally occurring clairvoyance. And you still see remnants of that to be found in humanity, this naturally occurring atavistic clairvoyance. But part of what Rudolf Steiner makes clear in his description of spiritual evolution, which is an important thread in this series, Spiritual Evolution, is that the consciousness of humanity is evolving. And the rapid growth of the ego in modern times has emphasized a new thinking that emphasizes the analytical and rational powers of the mind over the intuitive. And so because of this, onset or onslaught of analytical and rational thinking, the human needs to work their will at developing a new clairvoyance that can work along with the new rational powers. And in fact, the older atavistic natural clairvoyance doesn't really fit well with this new part that's coming on board, right? It's like putting, a new power onto an older computer board. Or I had a similar experience just this past week where I took my car in to get the window fixed, and they put a new power switch in for the window, but it blew the old regulator. The regulator that was there for the window got blown because it couldn't take the power of the new switch. So, there's sometimes problems when you try to mix old technology with new technology. It's not necessarily going to fit together. And that's why the older atavistic clairvoyance doesn't really hold well with the incoming rational analytical powers. So yeah, our mind works kind of the same way as technology. There's a third virtue to doing this kind of work, which hopefully you're experiencing now, and that is enlivening of your animale, which Jung referred to as the anima or animus, the masculine and feminine side of the soul, respectively. Animale being the Latin word for soul or soul life, the part of sentient being that sentient beings share. Animals and humans have this animale, the soul life. And this is something we have over and above the type of life that a plant has. We have outer movement, somewhat similar to animals, because we have commonality in our physical body. And we have inner movement we share with animals because we have commonality in the animale soul life with animals. We cry when we're sad, we growl when we're mad, we chirp when we're happy, and hey, sometimes we leap up physically for no reason other than it feels so good on the inside, as Plato said, right? Remember that? So let's do that. Let's have everybody leap up for no reason at all, except that it feels so good. So good. So good. So good. So good. Right. This is something that all sentient beings do for no rational reason at all. And it's not something that a plant can do. Although plants kind of have that gesture already. They're leaping for the light. Hope everybody out there in Zoom land and live stream land, don't break the furniture now. Okay. Enough Plato time. So this animale is this inner aspect that becomes animated, comes alive when it's moved inwardly, and this can move us outwardly as well. And this is also one of the reasons we're doing artistic activity, is to engage this animale soul life within us. So in this opening meditation that we did this evening, we went on a vision quest. We went into a cave, potentially had a vision, which I see some of you did. You brought back some goods. Perhaps a cave drawing you saw, an animal cave drawing. Might have been something that was standing still, might have been something that was moving. You got both. You had something that was a drawing on the wall, and you had also a sense of a live animal there in the cave. And this connects us to something very ancient, something that has fascinated modern humans for quite some time, the mystery of ancient cave drawings, animal cave drawings. And I've been enjoying some of the research in this particularly good book, The Mind in the Cave. Really good research into caves of Europe and Africa. Quite scholarly in its writing, but I'm also reading another book, The Way of the Shaman. And this comes at the idea of these sorts of things from a different direction. So this is what we're talking about, really, is approaching these questions from different directions. One of the books that's been actually the most helpful and insightful for me is this book, the work of Dr. Ibrahim Karim, Back to a Future for Mankind. Dr. Karim is the founder of biogeometry, which is based on ancient Egyptian subtle energy science, ancient Egyptian subtle energy science, of which I am a advanced class graduate. And I almost had Dr. Cream here in the loft one night because a while back I was holding biogeometry practice sessions, and Dr. Cream moved to Canada for a couple of years when things were getting kind of tumultuous in Egypt, political upheaval and whatnot. So he was here, and I met him several times and did classes with him. And he said he was going to come here to speak to the group, but he never did, unfortunately. But lovely, lovely man, just really lives the work. He's just really high up on my list of human beings that I respect, admire, and look up to. And on that note, I just want to read a paragraph from his book where he says, most of the great minds that influenced our lives had an esoteric spiritual background that they rarely revealed publicly. Isaac Newton, for example, experimented in alchemy secretly in the laboratory. Rudolph Steiner, one of the greatest thinkers of the 20th century, was firmly anchored in spirituality. Carl Jung, the Swiss psychologist, was among the most influential scholars of his time, along with other Europeans, like the writer and poet Johann Wolfgang von Goethe. I thought that was a really interesting paragraph because he basically points to people that are really at the top of the list in terms of people that have influenced me in my studies, both in science and spirituality. But the thing about biogeometry, birthed by Dr. Cream, is that it really brings the scholarly and the esoteric together, the scientific and the spiritual understanding together. And another word for esoteric is occult knowledge, which I've used a few times and will continue. Just simply means things that are hidden knowledge, not because it's meant to be a secret, but it's just that it can only be accessed through means other than logic, reason, and analysis. But this is why Newton had to do his occult studies on the side. Otherwise, he would have been ostracized from the scientific community. But actually, after he died and they went through his papers, they found out that Newton wrote far more on mysticism and esoteric subjects than he did on science. But of course, modern science wants to bury that fact because they really don't want to consider that there's such a thing as occult knowledge, that there is knowledge that can be accessed in ways other than through the scientific method and theorizing and using logic and analysis. But we really can't afford to ignore this other side of ourselves. It's coming whether we like it or not. This need to open up this other side of ourselves. It's coming whether we like it or not, just the same as the Freedom Convoy of truckers is coming to Ottawa this weekend, whether any politician likes it or not. It's coming. They're coming. They are rolling, and they're going to roll right in. It's a force of nature. It's part of our destiny to be free. And this is what the truckers convoy is about. It's about freedom. And this is what opening up this other side of ourselves is about. It is about the emancipation of the human spirit. So with regard to the integrating of these two sides of ourself, Dr. Cream in his book, he points to Carl Jung's distinction of the different states of human consciousness as evolving from the original primitive human, then into the ancient human, then what Jung calls the modern human, and then finally the contemporary human, which would be you and I. And he has actually a diagram I can show here, and then I'll pass the book around, that shows the different brain states of of these different stages of primitive human, ancient human, modern human, and then finally contemporary human. You want to pass that around and look. Because he's saying that originally the primitive human was primarily right brain dominant. They didn't think the way we think today. And Dr. Karim describes this right brain dominance about being about relationships between things, patterns, and putting, patterns and relationships together into a more holistic, expanded perception of things, or in a word, shamanistic. The primitive human was really of a shamanistic mindset. And this shamanistic mindset, this capacity for holistic perception, simultaneously served the survival needs of the human and the spiritual connection of the primitive human. Both were needed to survive and to have spiritual connection. Then over a long period of time, the orientation in the brain began to shift. And this correlates to what Jung calls the ancient human, where there was less of a shared tribal consciousness, and the ego was beginning to enter more and more into the individual. And the left hemisphere became more active. And this left side is known to be more focused on details. It has this power of objectification. The right brain is more subjective. It experiences a phenomenon from within it, a subjective experience of it being in it and it being in the person, whereas the left brain power allows the ego to stand outside of things, to stand outside of an object or a phenomenon. This continued to evolve into what Jung called the modern human, which is really the birth of the scientific mind, which is much more ego-based, much more awake to the outer world, much more looking for answers, looking for meaning. The ego is looking for identity and so forth. And then the fourth category Jung described as what he called the contemporary human, which is still being aspired for, which is the shifting of the brain back more to a center, to a balance point, balanced functioning of the cranial hemispheres and the powers that they each contain working together. And so that we can know something not only from the outside in, but also from the inside out, the way the earlier atavistic, clairvoyant, shamanistic mentality did. I'll just mention in passing another really good book about this idea of the right and left brain was recommended to me by my doctor, my medical doctor, who's also trained as an anthroposophical doctor, which is the form of medicine that Rudolph Steiner pioneered. So my doctor is what he calls, does anthroposophically extended medicine. He's trained in allopathic medicine, but also anthroposophical medicine. And he recommended this book called The Master and His Emissary. Subtitle, The Divided Brain and the Making of the Western World, written by a psychiatrist called Ian McGilchrist, The Master and His Emissary. And it deals with the different functioning of the right and left brain. And sometimes this idea of right, left brain has come into vogue and gone out of vogue and come back into vogue. But it's quite seriously considered settled science, how the two hemispheres work together but differently, and how they have really had an influence on the shaping of Western culture since the time of Plato, particularly this left brain coming in that's more ego-based. Did I say Plato? Oh, I feel for no reason at all I have to jump up and leap around just because it feels so good. So good. So good. Play-Doh time. So good. Yeah, that feels good. They say too much sitting is like the new smoking.
Yes.
So back to the cave drawings. According to Dr. Karim, the human has access to two fundamental levels of consciousness. There's this primary level, which allows for day-to-day functioning, and then a higher order consciousness, one that is accessed through altered states of consciousness. By some means, it could actually be when you go to sleep, you enter into this altered state of higher order consciousness, or it could be through the use of substances, but not necessarily. But the idea is that the mind in the cave was about accessing this higher order consciousness through initiation practice, which might have included sensory deprivation, which it certainly would have been if you're going deep into these caves, which some of them are extremely deep down in the earth, or a couple of miles to get in to the end of it. So the main interest is what is going on in the mind in the cave, and with the art that was produced there on the cave walls. Well, as with most art, it's reflecting something. It's a reflection of something. It's reflecting what's going on in the mind of the ritual artist. And these animal cave drawings were part of a ritual for the human to go deep into their animality, to connect with their own inner animality, their own soul life, and via that to connect with the animality or the soul of animals. And with any kind of ritual magic, be it cave drawings or a shaman taking on the shape of an animal, possibly mimicking the motion of an animal through dance, or wearing the skin and bones of an animal, it is to come into resonance with the animality of the animal. It is a form of animal speak. And these rituals were to heighten the inner communication with the animal, because there is a natural inherent relationship with animals. The shamanistic mind of the primitive human, as Jung called it, understood this natural relationship, this partnership with animals that humans have. And this is a very intimate, interwoven relationship, which I'll be unpacking more later in the next few sessions. But we know that part of the relationship was not only an energetic merging with the soul of the animal for ritual, but at times it led to and involved literally and physically consuming the animal. And this is justified to a certain extent. The consumption of animal flesh. But we'll see that this is an unconscious transmutation that's going on of animal matter when we consume it, the flesh, through eating it. And we need to make this transmutation of animal more conscious. We need to take it to a higher octave than a physical consumption through spiritual evolution in the future. This is something that's coming, that we have to make more conscious on a higher octave, because there is a deep connection and partnership we have with our brothers and sisters the animals, as the indigenous people refer to them, brothers and sisters. And there's something in that terminology we'll look at later. So this art in the cave that's produced by the mind in the cave, and you produced it when you took your mind into the cave, you produced art in your inner cave in this participatory vision quest you were active in. This art is sometimes called functional art. Functional art, this art in the cave, functional art. It wasn't artwork as we think of it in today's sense, like putting something up on the wall, putting up on the wall of your cave as if it's their living room, and they would sit back and admire it and maybe enjoy a few puffs of something there in the cave. No. These cave drawings were part of their initiation science. Initiation science. And the ancients had their own forms of science. We're not the first ones to come up with science. I mean, the word science means to know. It's about knowing. And they all had their own forms of knowing and accessing. And they had, through their own sciences, their own forms of medicine. And I also brought out another book to show, and it's kind of a classic written by Richard Gerber, medical doctor, on vibrational medicine. Vibrational medicine, a really good book if you're interested in this sort of thing. And so, yeah, vibration. Vibration is something we're going to be going into increasingly with this work. So these drawings, these cave drawings, they were not found near the entrance of the caves where daylight would illuminate them. But no, these drawings were sometimes a long, long ways in a dark place, and often involved a treacherous journey to get to this inner place, passing through very narrow crevices and crossing underground rivers, and would be a courageous act of initiation just to get there. But these recesses in the earth were also places of a very special vibration. You could call it a power spot. This is what Dr. Karim calls them. There's power spots in and on and around the earth where there may be, a stillness of your normal vibrations and an amplification of special vibrations that are not found elsewhere on the surface of the earth. And these ancient animal cave drawings were a form of ancient hieroglyph. And with hieroglyphs, it's not just about what they say, but also what they vibrate. What the hieroglyph vibrates. These ancient cave drawings were pictograms. They were pictograms, and they became vibrational access points to higher dimensions through the quality of their vibration that the shaman would attune to. So these hieroglyphs, these pictograms, they allowed a form of vibrational communication to take place. We know all communication really does involve vibration. And so in this special power spot, the shaman will be able to work with the amplified quality of vibration that was there, and then with these pictograms to focus in on the particular shapes, the forms of the animals, and attune with them for communication. So on the one hand, it may appear as if the mind in the cave was objectifying the animal, as we would do today with a painting or photograph of an animal. We go, oh, there's the animal. Look at the animal in that picture. And it was to a small degree. It was to a small degree objectifying, but it was a small degree because the shaman was only a small degree in the left side of the brain, the objectifying side. To a larger degree, that ancient Atavistic Clairvoyance was more subjective and would merge subjectively with the animal to get under its skin, so to speak, to become part of it, to become part of the animal, connected to it. So the animal would eventually become part of the human. That was the idea, is that the shaman would be able to connect with the animal, so the animal then would become part of the human, meaning that a hunt would take place that would lead to the consummation, the consuming of the animal as the consummation of this ritual practice. All very fascinating, all very fascinating. And I hope I described that clearly. If not, you can always rewind and watch it again. So this is really, about an actual spiritual contractual agreement. A spiritual contractual agreement between animals and humans. There's also contractual agreements between animals and other animals. We'll see this more clearly when we unpack more of this picture of spiritual evolution more precisely. But back to Dr. Karim, who is also an expert in Egyptian architecture. He trained as an architect before he developed biogeometry. And he speaks of the vibrational sciences of the ancient Egyptians and how this knowledge informs the architectural structures of ancient Egypt and the hieroglyphs that line the pyramids and temples. And he speaks of the importance of these shapes. In biogeometry, there's a whole science of shape, which he calls part of nature's design language. Nature's design language. Nature has its own design language. This is nature's way of communicating without words. It has a design language that involves shapes, angles, colors, pitches, and so forth, which all emit different qualities and frequencies. And all of these aspects of nature's design language are embodied also in animals, not just in buildings and pictures and pictograms, but in the shape of animals. So these cave drawings were visionary art in its early days, where the shapes of animals, their geometry, their biosignatures were put on the wall so the shaman could engage with these shapes in a form of sympathetic magic, so that there could be sympathetic resonance between the shaman and the animals, so there could be a consummation of this ritual. So now we're talking about vibrational magic or resonance magic, which is not really magic, but we call it magic because we can't see or understand what's going on with the normal eye and the normal mind. But likewise, the primitive and ancient human might have thought that our modern cell phones are magic because they wouldn't understand the physics or the metaphysics of what's going on with these things. But in the vibrational sanctuary of the cave, with the mind in the cave, the shaman could come into resonance with the biosignature of the animal and work with that. And there's a whole science of biosignatures. This is the second book that Dr. Karim wrote, called Biogeometry Biosignatures, and explains what they are and how to work with them. And very important understanding that we need to take up as a task for humanity, because we are proliferating all sorts of subtle energies into our environment through technology and bombarding ourselves with that and our own subtle energies and vibrations. So we need to really have better awareness and management of that, or it's going to become increasingly detrimental for us, which is why he called his first book Back to a Future for Mankind. Need to get back to a future for mankind, otherwise we're going to lose our future through the boiled frog syndrome, as they call it. So in a moment, we will do an exercise that will help you in tuning yourself and working more on the subtle level with things. Sometimes like to call it ana management, or ana management, managing your anima, your animali, this part of you that's sentient but can work with the subtle energies. And it's kind of akin to Jung's active imagination. But first, a bit about Rudolph Steiner's experience, because Steiner had some interesting experiences at an early age that made him realize he was experiencing a larger reality than most people. And this, of course, was troubling for him as a young boy, because he soon learned that he spoke about these experiences, people would look at him strangely and think he was woo-woo and wonder if he was a troubled human being having these different experiences than the normal human being. But when he came across a book on geometry, I believe it was in grade 5, he found a book on geometry. It gave him a huge sense of liberation and confirmation regarding his experiences, his spiritual experiences. The thing about geometry for him is that geometry is already something beyond this world. We use geometry in this world, mathematical concepts and geometric shapes and whatnot, but these are abstract concepts. These are not something we have in nature. You don't find perfect circles in nature, or triangles or squares. These are ideas. These are things that exist in a realm beyond the physical realm. So we can take these concepts of geometry and math, and we can manifest them in the natural realm. We can imprint them in the natural realm. We can build square buildings and make round swimming pools and things like that. But these are ideas that are coming from somewhere else. Where do these ideas have their source? Well, we might say they are supernatural rather than natural. They're not of the natural realm, they're of the supranatural realm, which is why the shaman, connecting to the form and geometry, let's say the biogeometry of an animal, was using a supernatural power to bring spiritual power to bear on the material realm. And when we understand and employ these powers, as we see the Egyptians did on a grand scale with the Great Giza Pyramid, which Giza Pyramid was by no means a tomb for a dead pharaoh, but it was rather a very carefully and precisely constructed cave. The Great Giza Pyramid is actually an incredible constructed cave, so that the initiates going into the cave, taking their mind into the cave, could achieve supernatural connections. The chambers of the Great Giza Pyramids were an advanced form of caves, just on a larger scale than what the ancient shaman used. So yeah, in these initiatory caves, things that took place that gave the initiates contact with realms beyond this realm. So you and I need to be doing that sort of thing. We need to be going more into the cave, and we need to be connecting with things beyond this realm. We're doing it here in the cave of the loft. So what I'm going to do now is lead another meditation that will involve qualities of shape. Okay. So these are actually yantras from the yogic tradition. These are shapes that are said to be, in a way, visible sound. You could say they emit a certain kind of frequency. So in working with these geometric forms, you have kind of a diffuse gaze staring at the center point, what's called the bindu point. It kind of takes you into a bindu space, which is an in-between space between waking consciousness and sleeping consciousness. So it's kind of a dream time space, you know, a shamanistic space. And you're going to just stare at that with a diffuse gaze, looking at the center for about 30, 40 seconds, and then close your eyes and conjure up that image again, really feeling into the quality of it. See it with your mental picturing. Feel into the quality of that. I'm going to go on to the next one. This one is a crescent moon. Different shape, different feel. Let's take a bit to stare at the bindu point. Just relax your mind, your brain. The diffuse gaze. And then close your eyes. Visualize it. Feel into the contrasting quality of this shape. Attuning to it. You might notice where you feel it in your body. And we'll move on to another one. And closing the eyes. Working that will and imagination to re-image it. See it, feel it, maybe even hear it. And we'll do one more. Just relaxing into it with a diffuse gaze. Let it work upon you. Again, closing the eyes. Visualizing it in as precise detail as possible. Tuning to its quality of shape. And then letting go of the practice. Taking your time to come back. Be able to feel different qualities in the different shapes. The thing about this practice is that it really engages the left logical brain in a particular and healthy and beneficial way. It's looking at the details, but it also satisfies this right part of the brain, its powers of imagination to see the holistic aspect of things. So we're working here to exercise that balance within ourselves. So I'll be giving something similar to that as the Animal Speak assignment for the week in a moment. But as we wind down this session, I want to focus back again on the animal and the mystery of the animal realm. In the previous two sessions, we opened up the questions, what is an animal and what is a spirit animal? And these questions are still in the air, and we'll be unpacking these questions as we move forward to come to some deeper insight of these questions about the nature of animals, the spiritual nature of animals, and even their origin, talking about the origin of this, which will take us beyond the limitations of the conventional material science of our day, which bases much of its theories by piecing together literally fossils from the fossil record. But we know we can access information beyond that means, beyond physical fossils. And this is necessary in this work to go beyond that. And one could say that what we're doing here is advancing the science of our day, which is so very important at this critical juncture on Earth, that we bring together the scientific and the spiritual and look at spiritual evolution. And I use this word spiritual evolution in contrast to just evolution or Darwinian evolution, the conventional sense of that. In conventional science, we're given a ground up view that all life has evolved from the ground up, that out of inanimate matter, something living has arisen. And this is the biggest inexplicable mystery science is confronted with. It has no explanation for how this has taken place. It's one of the biggest gaps in the theory of evolution. But we know that life begets life. Only something living can produce something living. We see that in nature. We have proof of that. And furthermore, only something living can produce something that is dead. That is why in the series I did before this, the one called Thinking Like a Plant, I made the somewhat outrageous statement that it is the plant world that produces the soil. It's not the soil that produces the plant. And we can observe this. It is plant matter that comes from the plant that has decayed and died and builds up the earth out of which more living plants can grow. And so it's actually the opposite of what the conventional scientific perspective is. And of course, this is a bit of an oversimplification, what I said, and needs more unpacking. And we'll go into this deeper. But it is good to know that something living and animate produces inanimate matter. This is a basic concept that needs to be understood so we can understand the grand scheme of things as we unpack spiritual evolution. And also make another curious statement to say something that will, again, fly in the face of conventional scientific theory, or the so-called settled science of our day, is that the human came before the animals, not the animals that came before humans. We've been taught that humans grew out of animals, right? But in fact, it's animals that grew out of the human. I'll let you scratch your head about that one for a week. Or two. A little bit of a bombshell there. But we're going to have to look at the bigger picture, the spiritual evolution, to understand this. So we're going to have to expand our perspective. We're going to have to expand our minds to understand how this works. I know it sounds a bit ridiculous from a certain perspective, from a material science perspective, but we're going to get into this. We're going to get into this as we go. All right. So the first one is to repeat the geometry exercise. What you can do is create your own geometric images. You can find them online or in a book, or just create them to draw the outline. To just work with outlines, like the outline of a square or a triangle or a crescent moon or a six-pointed star or an oval or a circle. You know, there's no end to these geometric shapes. So draw them on a piece of paper and then do what we did, to just gaze at them for a while and then close your eyes and then visualize them and feel the qualitative difference between each of these images. This will strengthen a lot of different aspects and balance the brain and so forth. The second animal speak assignment is to draw stick figures of animals. Just stick figures similar to cave drawings that are really drawing the outlines or drawing, you know, stick images. And in doing that, explore the presence of geometric shapes in animals' forms. The straight lines that are there, the curved lines, angles, maybe the triangulation of the leg, the knee, and so forth. And sense how animal forms come from the architecture of geometric archetypes. Yeah, just play with that. And we'll build on that in the next session. And then number 3 is the same one every time, the Ruckschau. Take a few minutes each day to review the events of the day in reverse order. View yourself from an objective, higher perspective, going through your day backwards as if you're looking at someone else, looking at a stranger, but it's you. What do you see? What are you shown? What do you learn about yourself? This is a way to strengthen many things, including mental picturing, memory, empathy, and self-knowledge. So I will post these on the powerforconsciousliving.com website on the Animal Speak assignment page. And we're going to take a little break here, followed by some music making with the Groovy Cats here in the loft, celebrating nothing and everything. And then last but not least, as the Greek philosopher Plato observed, every creature has an instinctual need to periodically leap into the air for no other reason than because it feels so good. So good. So good. So good.